we're recording now. Welcome back to Latin. So you're writing your third declension as we speak. It looks like today we're going to talk about classics in cinema. All right, I was able to whip something up real quick in the last 20 minutes, and I think it's going to be a good, fun treat. We're going to do verb reviews because I'm realizing people are still struggling with these two weird verbs, sum and possum. So unfortunately, we have to talk about those briefly. And then I'll probably show you how chapter 12 works. Because we're on chapter 12 now, people. That's exciting. We'll practice chapter 12 tomorrow, and then Wednesday, that is your homework for this week. I don't have the page number up there. Carson, you should flip open at chapter 12 and find the page number for me right now, actually. It'd be great. I bet it's like, I'm not totally sure, actually. But anyway, it'll be the first 5 exercises, the exercitationes in the textbook, so there won't be a printout for homework this week. It's one of those where it's like out of the textbook. We'll check those on Wednesday. We're going to have 3 brand new verb tenses now. So it's like kind of crazy, but I think they're really easy, honestly. Yes?
Page 101.
Page 101, it already says it on the board. Okay, the board version of me is further ahead than me. Yeah, it was one of the other clones. At this point, there's multiple clones running around. Apparently, we'll talk about Historia on Thursday. I didn't approve that with the other clones, but I guess we can try to whip something up. And then on Friday, we will do a chapter 12 vocabulary quiz. And the last of our declension series of quizzes will happen. We'll do the third declension on Friday. I'm hoping that people are starting to it's starting to click, and you're kind of just like, okay, like a declension, got it. Like I can learn it if I need to, exert this concerted effort towards learning it in a week. I can do that because most of you guys, though I have not finished grading, it seems like most of y'all were fine with the second declension. There are still people who, it's like you either know pretty much all of it or maybe none of it. So there are still some people in the latter category who don't really know any of it. But at this point, that's kind of on you. There's only so much I can do to help you learn that. If we spend 5 minutes at the beginning of class every day leading up to it, and you're not absorbing any of that, then that's like a little disconcerting, and we should talk about that during essay or something. Carson?
Jasmine Taylor left.
I would leave it in there. Sorry, guys. I know it's like a bummer to something's on my desk and the teacher's just like, leave it in there. But I really think that's like kind of the best policy. If you've noticed, this stack of textbooks we have on the filing cabinet is huge. All right, first declension. Most of y'all showed me mastery of that 2 weeks ago. Second declension. Most of you showed me mastery of that 3 days ago. Now, third declension, I'm not going to click through because let's go through it right now. I'm just going to add it on top of this. It might look kind of weird, but hopefully you're able to read that. Richard, what is the nominative singular third declension ending? Right, it's almost like a trick question, me asking that, because it's a question mark. So guys, I probably don't want you to leave it blank on the test, but it's almost like something you don't need to know. You just need to remember that you don't know it, because it's going to be different things. That's the whole deal with the third declension is first, I don't know, there's different flavors of Latin nouns. And I guess early on these Romans realized some of their nouns ended in A in the nominative. And they're like, okay, we're going to call it the first declension, the first group of nouns. And then they had some that ended in US and then some in R. And they were like, well, even though they in the US or R, they kind of behave the same after that. And that's the second declension. For the third, though, they're like, we want nouns to be able to end any old way they want. And if they're ending in a certain way, then they're going to decline in what we'll call the third declension style. So that's what this is for. It's so they get to have nouns that end in the letter X, like Nox and Rex and Pax. That's night, king, and peace. They can end in en, like Carmen and Nomen, song or name. They can end in us, but still be third declension instead of second, like corpus, body. So anyway, Connor?
What I was going to say was, so basically first declension is sort of detailed, second declension is less detailed, and third declension.
Kind of. I'm not totally sure if I know what you mean by detail.
Or
possibilities, kind of, for the nominative. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, first declension, they all end in A, in the AE in the nominative. Second, it's all US or R, and the long I, and the genitive. And third, it's one of 12 endings, right? You've seen. Well, anyway, let's see, Maddie Fisher or Grace, what is the genitive of third declension? It's something that shows up in the first and second without a macron, though. Anyone? This is where we're learning it, right, Miss Dugan?
Yeah, that's why I'm learning. That's why I don't know yet.
Well, that's the point I'm making. You can't make the same point I'm making in a sassy way. What?
IS.
Yeah, IS, exactly. So this is not the same IS that we're seeing in the ablative and dative plural for first and second. And we like that. That would be horrible if it was also a long IS. Because then it's like every time you see a third declension genitive, you'd be like, is it actually or ablative dative plural? No, it's this normal IS. So we have like Rex Regis, Civitas Civitatis. And often the stem of the noun is changing between the nominative and the genitive. What is the dative? This one's real nasty. I don't like it, Macy. Good, very good. So it's a long I. This is like kind of really confusing, I'd say, because we're used to long I in the genitive singular for second declension and the nominative plural. So I'd say that is my second to least favorite ending in the third declension. Just because it feels like, I don't know, we're used to long I in two other places at that point. And then to learn that datives can end in long I, that feels like different. Accusative, though, you gotta love the accusative. Carson or Kaylin?
That would be EM.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful, guys. We have AM in the first declension, UM in the second, EM in the third. If that's not incredibly inspiring to you, then like, what's even the point? Soraya, David, Ava, what's the ablative? Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you said macron. It's actually not with the macron, weirdly. You would think it is. Because so far, ablative singulars have all had, like, it's a single vowel with a macron. First declension to A with a macron. Second is O with a macron. And now it's just a short E. But again, these are macrons that don't really matter too much. So even if you did put a macron, it would be like, fine, I don't really care. Now, guys, the way I remember the third declension going on the singular side, this declension I really do like to go down the singular side in the plural. Is like, huh? Right. Yep, we spent 5 minutes discussing that. So the way I think of this is like a variable, as in like a math variable, like X. Like we don't know what it's going to be, and sometimes it really is that. Then this is the first one you actually do need to remember. You just need to straight up be able to like actually remember genitive. Sorry, internet kids. I know it's kind of weird when I'm drawing stuff on the board right now. I'm about to click through. And then to get the dative below the genitive, just drop off the S from the genitive. And then if you can also remember the accusative, and that's like just the second thing you're remembering, you drop off the consonant from that to get the thing below it. Does that kind of make sense to y'all? Where it's like we have these like 2-letter endings and then a consonant falls off of it to get the thing below it. That helps me. That's the way I definitely like came to be comfortable with the third declension. Yes? Don't need to remember the vocative. It is just a question mark if you're like curious. It's like the same question mark that happened here. The nominative plural, John, Aiden, or Connor. It's the first time we're ever seeing it. Caitlin, Caden, Jake, or Natalie. 2 letters. Anyone? Macy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Macy has it in front of her. That's fine. ES, it goes there, nominative plural, and accusative plural. Okay? And then the genitive, this is my least favorite ending in the third declension by far. It's not O-R-U-M, it's good. It's just this nasty little UM. And I think it stinks a lot because it's like the accusative singular in the second declension. And it's also the nominative singular for neuter second declension. So at this point, UM like does not have any distinct energy for me. It could be like a subject or a direct object or a genitive, and you have to know the declension of the noun you're looking at to know which one. And that is truly awful, and I'm sorry. Okay, and then the ablative and dative plural set of is are ibis. Yes, this is the sound that a Polish frog makes at night whilst croaking. Okay, and there it is. That's the third declension. Those orange ones, right? So the singular side, I gave you guys my little way of remembering it. Maybe you have your own thing. I think it works. I don't really have anything for the plural, but the plural is only 3 different endings. It's ibis. You know, dative and ablative plural. Dative and ablative plural are always overlapping. It's is for first 2. Now it's ibis for third. The es, which shows up in the plural direct object and subject, and then the nasty, McNasty, McRotten dude, genitive plural. That's only 3 different endings. Yes. Yep. So I don't think it's like less endings than the other 2 declensions because like we don't really have one for the nominative singular. And so once again, you'll be able to get bonus by telling me that like put the EM for accusative, but then if you put a question mark, because guys, we have 5 neuter third declension nouns: Carmen, nomen, song, name, corpus, tempest, body, time, and now caput, head. All of those, since they're neuter, the way they show up in the nominative singular is also how they show up in the direct object accusative. they don't get the EM. And they also get the A. So these purple A's you put to get bonus on the second declension, you just want to put those again. Because also words like Carmen and Nomen, they get the A's instead of the ES's. So Carmina, Nomina, Tempora, Capita for heads. Okay, anyway, any questions, Basie? Indeed. So I'll try to have those quizzes to you guys tomorrow or Wednesday or who knows, maybe I'll just get one of the clones to do them. All right, let's see here.
Do you have?
Way too many at this point. They're all kind of like molecularly
That's impossible.
very unstable on an atomic level at this point, if I'm honest.
Well, can you tell us the location of one?
Killing them.
They're all over the city. Sometimes they get in a like an NPC loop, and they just kind of like walk around doing like a script, like in a video game,
Oh.
and you can talk to them and they'll tell you the same thing over and over again. Like they'll give you quests.
Skyrim now.
They're NPCs. Wait, is Macy actually locked out? Why is this? We gotta fix it. How do you make it not do it?
I got it.
You know how to do it?
Yes.
Oh, it's really easy. Okay, no, it's really easy. For a little while I thought it was like complicated. It's just a little thing that you push in. Okay, guys, I'm gonna give you the gist of this. If I were you, I would take light notes, but since I am promoting dependence on your textbook, it's all in there. And if Carson said the homework's on page 101, I'm sure this stuff is showing up on like 99 or something. That's probably where chapter 11 or 12 starts. What? Yeah, 1 through 5, extracutatium, the first Latin you see after the vocabulary. That's what's due on Wednesday. It's those first 5. And now real quick, guys, Danny just reminded me of something. Before I even get into the chapter 12 notes, how to do my homework this week. So you're going to translate it like normal, but I want you to do 2 things, guys. Write down 1 question pertaining to something that confuses you. So this will probably be it could be something that's showing up in like more than 1 sentence that you're translating. But Danny and Maddie or whoever else, it only matters that like it could be just one of the sentences you're translating that gives you trouble. You need to specify what gave you trouble. I don't think this is hard. A lot of you guys have some ease doing this. But I think what happens in class is that we like forget what our questions were. You know what I mean? Like once I'm like showing you the correct translation or a student is translating it correctly, and suddenly you kind of like forget what gave you trouble about it. So I want you to write down what's giving you trouble so that at any minute, like during class on Wednesday, I can like call someone and be like, hey, like what did you have trouble with? And they're like, oh, it's number 5. It's not like we're not on number 5 yet. So I'll fix the word confuses. Richard? Cool, got it. Thank you very much. See, that's actually, it's an inside joke. It's like the word itself is confusing you. And then also, guys, I need you to be prepared to recite at least one of your translations. So, guys, you will only get half credit on your homework this week if you just do the actual translations. If I just see 5 translations, it's not good enough. I need to see, like, you can even write it as, like, number 6, and then it's your question. It should be, like, bullet pointed or, like, clearly spelled out. I need to be able to look at your homework and see that there's, like, 5 translations, but then there's, like, a 6th sentence that you wrote down. And, like, maybe you draw an arrow, and you're like, this is for number 3, or this is for number 2, or this is for, like, all of them, actually. It doesn't have to, like, I just, like, 1 sentence, 1 complete, full, well-written sentence, so that's fine. And then this. So this could be weird. Everybody might, like, choose the easiest one. If there's one that's, like, really obviously easy, everyone's like, oh, that's the one I was prepared for. So this won't, like, help that much. But you need to choose one where you're like, you know what? If he calls me to read this one, I'll tell him, or, like, if he calls me to read any of them, I'll tell him that, like, oh, you know, this wasn't the one I was ready for, but I'll read number 3. Like, I don't mind reading my number 3. And it doesn't have to be correct. It can even be if you, like, get it so wrong, and you can tell that it's so wrong that it's kind of goofy sounding or funny, right? Remember that happened last week at some point? Y'all can do that. Like, you can read the one that you think, like, you know, you just, like, couldn't get it to sound right, and so it sounds funny. That can be the one you read. Don't, like, purposely try to have goofy translations that don't make sense. But if it happens, it happens, and just be willing to share it. I'm not saying the one you're sharing has to be the one where you're like, I got this one perfectly right. It's exactly right. It can be. It doesn't have to be, though. Any questions on this? So it's just kind of like slightly bonus deluxe style homework. Richard, you got this? You're gonna do this little tiny bit. What is this? Like 3 extra minutes of work max? This part shouldn't be any. This is just a way to think about like homework in general. Is that you should always be willing to share your translations, your creations, right? Any questions? Oh my.
Can I ask the Rhino last the office, please?
Yep. All right, guys. So let's see. Let's come back to the perfect tense. Let's come back. These are the new vocab words, apparently. Those look chapter 13. Oh, no, those are chapter 13. I'll get the right vocab soon. But let's talk about classics in film and make sure that Miss Fisher is not talking over this entire class. So, guys, let's talk about the various times that famously Hollywood is a receptor, which is probably not fully a word, of classical civilization, right? So this is kind of, this will include our Myth Monday, though honestly we're just going to reference different myths and histories that are kind of referenced in these movies. But it's mostly a reception corner Monday, and that we're just talking about these various points of reception in 20th century pop culture film and 21st century at the end. Anyway, this first one, guys, I don't think you guys probably know about this. This is a Disney short animation made like, I think, at least a couple. Have you?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen this. I kind of want to watch it. It is a short, so it won't be that much of an investment. But it's it's made a few years before Snow White, at least 2. I think Snow White is around 36 or something. So this is Disney like getting ready to make their first big Disney princess movie. And it's a short, so I guess it would have been playing probably before features or something. I want to look into that more. I might do like a part 2 of this where I go back through with a little more information. Some of these I think I want to watch. So maybe there's like a part 2 to this where I've watched some of these and can talk more in depth. But this is Persephone here. The animation style looks kind of similar to Snow White. Her character design does not look as like realistic. I mean, Snow White's not realistic necessarily, but it looks a little more like technically evolved than Persephone does here. She looks a little bit like I have these weird like Betty Boop cartoons on VHS that we got like for free from a department store in the 90s, and they're really creepy and they look like this. And it's like I'm kind of unnerved by 30s style animation. It's there's something about it that's kind of weird to me. But that's Persephone, who we've talked about recently. As you can see, this is a very Luciferian representation of what's his name? Hades, yeah. So we've talked about that with Disney's Hercules, and it's even more the case with this. So there's that. One day I'll watch it. These are some cool stills. It looks like at the end she like comes back from the underworld, and she's the goddess of springtime. So obviously Hades is like the bad guy. We have Spartacus in 1960. This is Stanley Kubrick's first big movie. And he goes on to be a director of a lot of well-known movies. Do anybody know Spartacus? The story of, we might talk about him soon. Anyone? So he's a gladiator who led a slave rebellion. And this movie is based loosely on that. There was like a book written earlier this decade that was about it. And so it's adapting a book that's adapting something. But yeah, so there's that. And so yeah. Spartacus is kind of cool though. What we will talk about him at some point. But anyway, Stanley Kubrick's kind of cool. This guy, clearly related to him. And he went on later that decade to make Space Odyssey, 2001 A Space Odyssey, which is like really cutting edge visuals in that movie. But this is the beginning of the 60s when he was still just kind of like a normal Hollywood director. He goes on to make like very artistic and weird movies like The Shining with Jack Nicholson in the 80s. One of the, yeah, so he would all of a sudden just like be making a horror movie. But like that's the one time he made horror movies, it was The Shining. Apparently Stephen King did not like that adaptation. In 1968, we have Cleopatra. Let's have Maddie move behind Kaylin, just so maybe we could have one class that isn't talked over incessantly. Yes, right now. Oh, you're not?
Am I talking?
So I'm like literally hallucinating?
I'm not talking.
Move right now.
Why? I'm not talking.
Okay, Cleopatra in 1968, guys. Elizabeth Taylor. By the way, Cleopatra Ptolemy VII, who is like the Cleopatra we care about, she's probably a little paler than the actual, Elizabeth Taylor is a little paler than actual historical Cleopatra. Cleopatra maybe wasn't as African as she was Greek, but she definitely wasn't like a British lady with heavy eye makeup on. But that is, I think, actually like a well-known movie that didn't perform that well in the box office. I wonder if it was made in the wake of Spartacus. I'm not totally sure, to be honest. But there it is. It's kind of about, like, it's loosely based on the Shakespeare play, Antony and Cleopatra. But the movie kind of expands beyond the play's scope because it kind of has her in the beginning of the movie as like Julius Caesar's girlfriend. And then later, after Julius Caesar is killed, she's Antony, who was Julius Caesar's top soldier relationship person. Okay, 1981, we have Clash of the Titans, guys. This is some really good 80s style schlock. It's just like really kind of goofy, and it probably is worth talking about in the context of Perseus because it is a loose adaptation of the myth of Perseus. As you can see here, this is, I guess, presumably Perseus right here. I don't really picture Perseus looking like that, but he fights the Medusa, and there's just all kinds of crazy stuff. Sorry, that's a little gory, but it's like, it's 80s style, so it doesn't seem that bad. The Medusa, there's better pictures of her, but like honestly, they were kind of spooky. I don't want to like show better pictures of the Medusa. What? So the 80s is all about, well, Connor thinks of what he's going to say. 80s is all about like practical effects, right? CGI was not yet a thing. George Lucas's, the Star Wars guys, his company, Industrial Light and Sound, was like getting to the point where they could start putting digitally, like computer generated special effects in movies. But everything was animatronics, a lot of puppetry, and just like weird, like they call them practical effects, not CGI. And nowadays people get all goo-goo eyes over practical effects when they see them. That's why a lot of people like Baby Yoda, because that is like some next level puppetry. He's just a really good puppet, Baby Yoda. And when people see it now, they're like, oh, it's like the good old days, practical effects, which was a thing right up until the 90s when we start having the horsepower, basically, to, drop a computer graphic into a movie. Connor?
I love how some people think they picked up moonlighting even though like either CGI was really bad back then or there wasn't even CGI.
Okay, I wasn't going to say it, but it's funny you bring that up. Some people think this guy, Stanley Kubrick, this movie, Space Odyssey, this was him, like, getting ready to shoot the moon landing for NASA. God. That NASA, like, tapped him because they were like, oh, he's, like, really good with cameras. He knows how to make things look like they're happening in space. Because this movie, Space Odyssey, like 50, 60 years ago, had like pretty good zero grav effects of people like bouncing around on space. So anyway, they think that like he's the guy who filmed it for NASA, which is really hilarious. And that he did it to get like a really high quality camera lens. Like NASA was like, hey, we'll make you like a really crazy lens that you can use to shoot this one movie that no one will see in the 80s if you film our moon landing for us in like a basement in LA. And of course, that's not true, but it's kind of fun to think about, but it's definitely not true. So anyway, this is happening at the beginning of the 80s, and it kind of informs of a whole like genre of movies in the 80s, which is just like kind of crazy, fantasy, macho, heavy metal adjacent aesthetic-wise films like Conan the Barbarian. We even have things like The Never-Ending Tale or Labyrinth, or any of these other awful-looking movies that have, like, puppetry. You like Labyrinth? That's cool. So, yeah. I'm not really an 80s kid, so a lot of these things, they're, like, before my time, and I don't, like, if your parents didn't show them to you, you wouldn't see them, or you might just be... I have a shirt with this movie poster on it because the movie, but I'm like a poser. I don't actually like Conan the Barbarian, but I like the aesthetic of, like, a movie poster like this. Like, I think that looks sick. Well, will I sit through the movie Conan the Barbarian? Probably not. Probably a little boring. And then, of course, we have Hercules in 1997. So it's basically like I'm finding one every decade or so. And there's ones I'm glossing over. I might do a deeper dive if I do a part 2 of this to find the little, like, lesser-known ones. But that is a big deal, and this is Disney returning to the Persephone thing in terms of drawing on Greek myth. So it's kind of cool. It's like they started with the Greek myth for the first princess, and then kind of moved away from that and went more towards like Western fairy tales, like Sleeping Beauty and stuff. But this is them returning to their roots in a weird way. And then, of course, we have Mr. Sixpack himself, 300. This is a superhero called 300. I'm kidding. It's called 300. Well, why is this movie called 300? Anyone, Connor?
This is what happened.
Wait, why did I say? I meant to say Jake.
Because it's about there's 300 Spartans going against a war against Spartans, and it's one of the best movies. It's one of my favorites. It's my third favorite. And
That's sweet. That's cool.
Major Mom.
It's a little violent, so I wouldn't like recommend this to you guys without your parents' consent. Oh, don't just start yelling. That's weird. So yeah, this came out when I was in high school, and despite what you thought about like the plot or anything like that, visually it was really kind of cool looking. This is the comic book, which I'll talk more about. And sometimes this is a comic book, I think it's written in the 90s, but I have to like check that. And they would take some of the panels, is what it's called in the comic book, and they would do it shot for shot in the movie. So you end up with this like heavily stylized look. Y'all know what I mean by stylized? Like it's not, Jake?
I guess you could say like it's because the movie they try to it's like you say stylized it's because the entire movie it looks the same.
Kind of, yes. There's a very cohesive and like linear like style in terms of it's like very what's the word? Throughout the whole movie, it's kind of got this similar look. But yeah, it's just stylized in that it's not realism. They're not going for realism. They're using a lot of dramatic, intense lighting. They're going with a lot of these like weird shots that are like heavily silhouetted and stuff like that. And so yeah, there's just a distinct visual style. And I think this is Zack Snyder, the guy who goes on to direct the Justice League movies. And that's when we first see this. It's kind of like it kind of happened in The Matrix, but they took it a little further, where someone will be like, it'll be like regular time, and someone's like about to like hit somebody with their sword. And then all of a sudden it like slows down, and then it'll like speed up again, and then it'll slow down again. That started with 300, as far as I know. Matrix had like slow-mo, but this would have like slow-mo that then gets sped up and goes back to slow-mo. Anyway, it's kind of cool. It's not about historical accuracy. We know that it was actually more than 300 Spartans fighting against these Persians, but the number got exaggerated, over 2,000 years ago when it happened. It was still an impressive battle, and it's what this is about. It's about something that's happening in the Persian Wars when, like, in the 5th century or 4th. So this is kind of before Rome is really a big thing, where Greece is still having these, like, really epic battles with, in this case, Persians. Jake?
My favorite part about this entire movie is like when the Persians will get all the bows ready and they'll like all release the bows at once and it makes the entire sky black.
Yeah.
So,
And I think I read it with my class last year, and I don't know why it didn't come. I think it was like a reading in chapter 4, but it's in the textbook at one point. Cicero talking about the sky getting blacked out with arrows, and it is kind of sweet the way they show that in the movie. It's based on a comic book. Like I said, I don't actually know when it came out, but it's by this guy Frank Miller, who also did The Dark Knight Returns, which is like this huge deal in the 80s when that came out. It was one of those moments where people are like, oh, comic books good? Comic books real literature? What? And it's like, yeah, buddy, it's true. So that's Frank Miller. He also created Sin City, and a lot of these things have been heavily adapted. The Christopher Nolan Dark Knight Returns, that's not actually based on this, but there is a really good DC animated movie based on Dark Knight Returns. It's like a weird alternate future of Batman after he's like retired and he's an old man. And like the city is overrun by this like Joker gang. Anyway, that's Frank Miller. So that dude is really good for making comics that are then adapted by Hollywood. Usually not super well, but in 300's case, actually it's pretty good. And Zack Snyder went on to have like a really long career. Or like he still is. He did Batman versus Superman, the Justice League movies. A lot of these are very contentious. People really do not like his Batman because he has Batman like killing people, which is not really a thing for Batman at any point in the comic book since at least the 50s. But say what you will. There's a lot of hype around. He's gonna like re-release the Snyder cut of Justice League on HBO Max, I think, at some point this year. Because people are like, oh, it got messed up by the studio. They released like a badly edited version of it, and so everyone's hyping like, oh, this like 4-hour version of it that's gonna fix everything and make it good. A lot of DC fanboys are like mad because they feel like Marvel always gets the good stuff. But I'd like to see DC have more good stuff. Jake? Oh, there's no Superman. I guess because he's like
dead.
Right, he's dead, yeah. And this is in the style of an artist called Alex Ross, who does like live action looking illustrations.
I think it was revised that
So the movies I just went over.
I do not know.
I'm a DC guy, honestly, and an X-Men guy. So the Scarlet Witch, the WandaVision show on Disney Plus. Oh my gosh, guys!
I watched the Tears days.
That's the weirdest thing I have ever seen.
It's so weird. It's really good. It's really, really weird, and I really, really like it, especially the ending of the new episode this weekend.
Yeah.
So the ones I was just talking about, those are like movies that either have critical acclaim or actually well liked or popular, or they just have like a cultural significance. Like no one walks around saying, "Oh, Clash of the Titans is the best '80s movie," but a lot of people like it because it's so corny. So all of those movies have like a place in people's hearts. But there's a lot of movies that are like this that have come out in the recent years. I've not seen them, but at one point there was a year where 2 Hercules movies came out at once, and they both look like crazy bland, and one has The Rock in it, as you can see. The other one, I don't know. I didn't see either of them. I'm a bad Latin teacher in that way that I do not like, oh, I got to go see the new Hercules trash. And then they redid Clash of the Titans. I think it's just loosely based off the original. Or the original was like this neat kind of like now it's like a funny movie to watch because of the weird props. This is probably just some dumb CGI explosion of nonsense. Yeah, these are the kind of movies it's like, I guess if you want to see a dumb movie and you just want to eat popcorn and see it, like those are what these are for, I think. That is what these are for. And theaters are technically open. So, Richard, what were we going to say? Okay, so that's kind of it. I'm going to go back and add a little more here and there. But that's kind of it. Maybe throughout the week, if I think of more films, I'll add them and we can start the class with them. What? Oh, yeah, I think that's a sequel, The Wrath of the Titans. Yeah, so I need to add the other Hercules and The Wrath of the Titans. It's kind of funny. Apparently, I included the picture, but I don't know anything about it. But it sounds – I think there's a 300 sequel, which is silly because I don't think Zack Snyder, the director, is the same. And I don't think it's based off a comic book by Frank Miller like the original was. So I think it's just like Hollywood being like, we made money off of that last time. So I can add some. Are there any others? Are there any, like, it could be cartoons or silly things where y'all are like, oh, what about this? Oh, wait, I could have put Percy Jackson, what? Gladiator, yeah, okay. I'll have a slide about Gladiator. Let me write it down. Yeah, this will be fun. Tomorrow, y'all are going to be writing your third declension, and then I'll start off by going over some that I forgot. Gladiator. Even though we don't need to talk about Percy Jackson, I want to make a slide for him because it is significant. Wrath of the Titans. What else? There's probably another thing. Pan's Labyrinth, I don't think has to do with Pan, the satyr, at all. So I don't think that's actually relevant. All right, I'll get back to you guys. Let's see here. Okay, now we got to go back to the perfect tense. Okay, guys, we have a little more than 10 minutes. That's just enough time for me to show you these 2 slides. That's all it is. It's up to you, ultimately, if you want to take notes, but you got to make sure you're watching, Grace, the screen, okay? So chapter 12 is called the perfect tense. I really like where the textbook goes after this chapter. I think it starts to get really, like, into some, like, meaty, substantial Latin. That's, like, more expressive in terms of what can be communicated than what we had previously. And part of that is the perfect tense. I've had kids before struggle a lot with the perfect tense, but I think I'm realizing ways to teach it in a way that it makes it not so scary. It's really not that bad. So, Alora, basically, what this chapter gives us are 3 other tenses. Okay, that's what these 3 are on this poster. Internet kids, I'm holding up my poster that has all 6 of the tenses, and now we finally have unlocked the right side of it, okay? So it is 3 whopping whole new tenses, which is kind of crazy. And that's why this week I really want to like review like present, imperfect, and future tense endings. But these are not too bad. They're actually easy to recognize. So guys, up until now, we really only needed the first 2 principal parts of a verb, right? The amo, the amare, the first person singular form, right? That's what the first principal part is. It's just the first person singular form. And then the infinitive is the second principal part. The version that is unconjugated, that just means like 2 verbs. But now we're finally going to need to be able to use and recognize the third principal part. And in this case, it's a mavi. For a lot of first conjugation verbs, all that happens is that the ARE turns into an AVI. And there's different weird things that will happen to the perfect stem. Perfect stems always look kind of like a little different, but you do see patterns. Like I just said in the first conj, it's often this VI. And so what this form is, just like how this one is the first person singular present tense, meaning I, verb, in this case, I like, this one is the perfect tense first person singular. So it's still first person singular, but it's perfect tense. And guys, we are just going to translate the perfect tense basically exactly how we always translated the imperfect. And that's why I don't think this chapter is that bad. But that's the first person singular one, Amavi, I love. And now the book makes a big deal. You can use have and has to make it sound like it's happening further in the past. But you don't have to, and so you can just do verb. Don't do was or were verbing. I'll show you in a second, but actually don't do was or were, but do verb. The second person, Amavisti, that was kind of crazy. They're adding an STI. That's kind of weird. The third person singular, they're just adding a T, okay? And then an MUS, ISTIS, and then this third person plural one stands out a lot. This ERUNT. Where does that E come from? Who really knows? But you know that phrase, veni vidi vici? That is just a bunch of these. That's 3 perfect stems like this in a row. Veni vidi vici. So, you know when he said, I came, I saw, I conquered, you could translate that as like, oh, I have come, I have seen, I have conquered. But just I verbed is perfectly good for the perfect tense. Oh my God.
Why did he put Jen here?
This is old. And then we have something called the pluperfect. So I'm gonna make a version of this that's on the slide, e-learners. But so basically, guys, we have the present tense in Latin, and then going like back in time from the present tense up until the present tense. That is what? Anyone? That is the good. That's imperfect. I didn't really give y'all enough to understand what that was, but yeah, that would be imperfect because that's why imperfect. It means incomplete. Perfectus in Latin means complete. John, stop. Perfectus means completed. So imperfectus is like, oh, it happened in the past. It could still be happening. I was verbing, whatever it is, lauda bomb. I was phrasing. Maybe I still am. But that's what the imperfect tense is. Like it's from the past that goes all the way up to the present tense. Further back, that's when we get the perfect. So just verb is fine for perfect. So you can translate imperfect or perfect as verb. That's fine. But even further back, we have pluperfect. Okay, plu just means it comes from a word that means more. So it's more complete. And for that, we use the helping verb. As you can see, had. Okay, you may have never thought about it, but the verb had, it expresses something happening further back in time than something like have or has for perfect or was or were for imperfect. And so we essentially have 3 past tenses, guys. But don't be scared because I think y'all are pretty comfortable with imperfect. We're going to practice it more. And all of these, whereas these things are weird and like unique, these are all, what letter do you see in all of them? Anyone? It's a little weird. It's an M in the first singular, huh? E and then R and A, the ERA. So the ERA is a dead giveaway. So whereas for perfect, it kind of does matter that you know the dictionary entry and you're like looking at the third principal part. For pluperfect, if you see an ERA in the ending, it's pluperfect. You don't have to be like, oh, I know it's like the third principal part. Like, no, you just see the ERA. You're like, okay, I'm gonna use had to translate it. Bam, I'm done. The first singular ends in M, but like that's pretty common at this point. And then future perfect, guys, instead of ERA, it's ERO, I, or U, which is a theme for perfect. Oh, except actually it's not really. But guess what? This like future perfect tense doesn't really show up much at all. You would use will have verbed. But it's like super rare. So like almost like not worry about future perfect much. So translating perfect versus imperfect, both of them, the ones with bomb, boss, spot that are imperfect that we've known from chapter 5, and now these new it's, and this arunt verbs, they can both be translated as verb. And the other word for the verb form of a verb in English is simple past. Whereas like uniquely imperfect can be was or were verbing or used to verb. And perfect uniquely can be have or has a verb. They can both be verb. So I would err, guys, towards just translating both of these tenses as verb. And it's only for pluperfect where you have to whip out the had, and future perfect where you have to whip out the will have. But it's like you can use has and have if you want, if you think it sounds good for a perfect tense verb. But you can just go with verb too, and that's good enough. Any questions? Does anybody feel like Latin just got way harder and they're mad now, Richard? More boring. Yeah, fair enough. It's hard to see like why do we need 3 more tenses? Like I thought the 3 we had were good enough, but it's all about nuance, guys. All right, I might give y'all a little time to work on H dub, but First,
Why have you not?
what? Oh, because these are old. Remember, guys, I said I
You thought we were
didn't
gonna do that?
work much yesterday. So I just want y'all to not forget the imperfect endings that we have. The bomb, boss, spot, bomb, spot, font. That BA makes something past tense and perfect. I think if some of y'all still get it like confused with the future tense. All right, y'all can work on homework. So if you don't have a textbook, then maybe try to drill the third declension or something. But for the last 6 minutes, y'all can work on homework quietly. All right, e-learners, that's it for today. Remember, just so you know, that is the homework, and I will post it probably tomorrow. All right, or maybe today.
Okay.
And goodbye.
Bye.